Next thing to do is to pick out your leather. Now if you're going to do a project that you want to dye and put a particular color, for something like this, where is that little plastic piece here I put over here? This is really, really thin. And I'm thinking it might be a good idea to stick with something that's thin like this. The problem is that most of my leather is not thin. It's thick. I prefer thick leather with most of the projects that I do. So I'm going to look here for a piece that would suit this particular project. Okay, here we go. I'm going to look through the leather here. This, okay, that's about, I'm guessing, if I had to guess, that's what, it's measured in ounces. I don't know why. But that right there, if you actually measure it, is, I'm guessing, about 6 to 8 ounces. And that is way too big for what I'm going to be doing. So here's my measuring. You can see there with the ruler, the width of that is about 4 millimeters. That's a fairly wide piece of leather. So that's too big. This here, as you can see from the edge, is, I'm guessing, about 2 millimeters, roughly. Yep, that right there is about 2 millimeters, as you can see. So this is half the width of the other piece I showed you. The question is it big enough for the project I'm going to do? Now this, you can see there's some artifacts on here, some abrasive pieces. I really can't use this for a big piece because of that stuff. So do I have enough in here that I could make this project out of without having those artifacts in it? That's the question. Is this going to be usable as a piece? Let's see here. I don't see any way to do this piece without having these artifacts in it. It'd be better to, if you, like this is usable area here. This area here is usable. This is usable area here. This is usable area. This is, but these artifacts, it doesn't look too bad now, but if I dye this, it'll look like these huge streaks right in the middle of it. Because this portion here is more absorbent, and it'll suck up all the dye, and it'll look like a cat just scratched it. It won't look very good. That's why you got to make sure, you don't, if you're going to dye something, you don't want this kind of artifact that goes through all the way through the top layer. Because the top layer is less absorbent than the bottom layer, and these sections here will turn into big dark streaks. In fact, let me show you that. That's probably a good thing to see. I'll go ahead and put this on. Because selecting leather, particularly if you're using scrap pieces, is probably a good thing to know a little bit about. So let's check this out. I'm going to show you really quickly what happens if you select a piece with an artifact in it and think you're going to dye it. Okay. I'm just going to do a little piece of it here. This piece right here is all I'm going to use. Okay. There we go. You can see the artifacts are right here. One there and one there. Let's use a color that I've been wanting to try on this white leather right here. It's called just green leather dye. Green leather dye. I'm not using any gloves here, which can go really badly if you're not careful. If you haven't even opened it yet, put on some gloves, because you'll get it all over you, and then it'll get all over the project you're working on. Guaranteed. So I'm going to open up this puppy. Hope I don't splash it everywhere. Here we go. Now, there's that part, and then there's a little film here. Got to pull off. Be careful with it. You can see that green's all over. I dispose of it in the trash. And then I'm going to pull the glove off. I'm going to take what I love to do with this kind of stuff. I'm just going to take a Q-tip. I use Q-tips for a lot of this kind of stuff because they're so easy to use and you have a lot of control over what you can do with it. And I'm going to dye this really quickly here. This is white leather being dyed green. Now, one of the flaws with chromium leather, which is basically white leather, is that sometimes you get this like white chalky paste looking substance afterwards after you dye it. Oop, that's not good. Got a little spot there. Okay, and there you have it. Dispose of the Q-tip. Before you do anything, always put your cap back on very carefully. The last thing you want to do is think, oh yeah, great, and you spill it over everything, because that dye will not come off. Leather dye is extremely, what's the word for it? Pervasive, perhaps. When it gets on something, it doesn't want to come off. So you do not want it to get on anything, including your hands. So what we have here is actually, it's a nice green color. But as you can see here, you got these artifacts that show up. Not as bad as some I've seen. Some of them, the coloring just turns like a real dark color when it hits the open areas. This one's not as bad as some. So I probably could make a green pouch and it would look okay if I wanted to. Anyway, there you go. Got a little bit on my fingers. Can't help it. So there we go. We've got... I'm thinking green might actually be a good way to go. I like the idea of doing this in green. So yeah, let's do that. Let's do this in green. Got the piece right here. So I've decided this piece here is not going to cut it because of the artifacts. So I'm going to look for another piece. Big enough. No, that's not big enough. Da, 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 da. Don't mind me singing. Let's see. Show you this selection process here. This is the selection process. Okay. This has artifacts in it too, as you can see here. Question is, do I have enough of this that's salvageable? And the answer to that is no. There isn't enough of this that's salvageable for this. See that? This won't work. So that piece won't work. This piece has gotten wet, so it's a little bit... You see when it gets a little bit wet, it's not exactly... But it actually is big enough. For something like this, I think this is doable. It's a little dirty, but when I dye it, it won't matter. So this is the piece I'm going to select to use for this. There we go. So I'll sight it over here. And the cats decide to show up. One of the cats, anyway. He thinks, oh, this is a lot of fun. What are you doing over here? It's hard to do this with a cat in the way. So I might have to take a little break here and give the cat some attention. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Signing off temporarily. Okay, yesterday I believe it was, maybe the day before, put this leather down here after I'd gotten it soaking wet to see if there's any way for me to make this leather salvageable. Because I had a big warped section in it. And that is salvageable, actually, I think. So I could use that because the natural wear and tear would eventually wear that out. It wouldn't be a big issue. You know, the hardest part of having that deformation in it was the inability to actually cut the piece out of it. But I went ahead and cut the piece out of it anyway. It didn't really matter. I found another piece to use, which I'll continue from here on that. Okay. So you can see, you can get something wet and probably make it usable. For something like an eyeglass case you're going to make for yourself, I don't know that it's that big of a deal if it's a little bit different. But, yeah, so there you go on that. I'll return that to my pile. Okay. The other thing I wanted to look at is these pieces I put under the cutting board. Hey there, buddy. Hey. As you can see, I've got another buddy here. Come on. Come on, buddy. Come on. Oh, you rascal. This here is another cat. Likes to roam around and demand attention. We're in the middle of a rainstorm, so it's not sure if it wants attention or if it just wants to go and hide at this point. It's vacillating, if you will, between the two. Okay, buddy. Let's give you a little bit of attention, then I'm going to put you down, okay? Be nice. Don't growl at me. Doesn't like to be picked up. Let's see if we can find some other piece that will work that I don't have to reshape or do something with. Ah, now that is a good piece for it. Take your square and see that? It'll fit. It's literally just the right size and right on the nose. Perfect size. That's what I'm going to use. And this I'll use at another time for something else. Okay.